Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 here to recap SEC basketball action from the past weekend, Saturday, February the 4th. Blake, let's start in Knoxville, where one of the more anticipated games of the day. I don't know, you're better at determining these than I am. Was this the rock fight of the year?
I mean, from a scoring standpoint, it has to be because it's the lowest
Right.
scoring game in the league to this point. But in all honesty, like these are some of the kind of games that we saw this weekend that if you really look back on, it's easy to get caught up in talking about big games and all this kind of stuff. But if you really look back on some of these matchups, and look, we got one of these in particular wrong. We'll talk about in a few minutes, but this was exactly the kind of game it was always going to be. Like, I mean, you had two teams defensively that you just understood, we're going to, that's the strength of their team. It's what they do best. You also had two teams that are a little bit iffy when it comes to shooting the ball consistently. And so the recipe for that is this kind of game 46-43. Tennessee holds on. The teams combined to shoot 5 of, 48 from 3. Talk about timing. I put out the Ken Pom stat on Twitter Saturday morning and said, hey, just so everyone knows, like the SEC does rank 32 out of 32 conferences in 3-point shooting in conference play. And, obviously, if you just have one good shooting performance, that can be a big differentiator this season. So if you're a team that can just make shots from outside, the averages tell you the other team's not going to do that, just based on where teams are at right now. But for these two to go combine, again, 5 of 48 from 3, they both shot 35.7% from 2. Whew, yeah, it was. I think there's a deeper discussion here, and I don't want to start off on a pessimistic note, but I think sometimes we mistake good defense or we mistake
Bad
bad
offense.
offense for good defense, and I thought there was some of that in this game, just some bad offense. But again, you do have to give the defense credit on some of that because we know that these two teams, the way they're structured, they have two coaches that know what they're doing in terms of getting their guys to defend, in the right way and all that. So, I mean, I don't really know how else to describe this game other than just it was what it was. And, it certainly, gets the social media headlines and everybody making fun and all this. And I tweeted about 5 minutes into the game. I said, this feels like Auburn Northwestern. Little did I know how right it was going to be,
Yeah.
because that game was 43-42. I really thought first to 40 was going to win this one. But yeah, just, I mean, it's a good win for Tennessee. Good in terms of that they didn't lose. I mean, you certainly would have liked to play a little bit better. And the one thing I kept thinking about as this game's going on is, I mean, Vescovy and Ziegler just were not hitting shots. And yet Tennessee was still able to do what they did. And that's Josiah Jordan James, with 15 points, which in this game, 15 points is like, that's like 30. So
Yeah.
I don't know how else to say. I mean, I know all the talk's going to be on the final play. Certainly a very controversial final play where Green goes up for the 3, and who was it? Was it Kamwa that was right there? Um, yeah, certainly some controversy surrounding that, but the game as a whole, not the easiest on the eyes, but it's a win for Tennessee.
Yeah, I'm going to bring up an interesting stat with Tennessee, and I'll do it in the power rankings. So everybody might want to tune in for that. I mean, there are other reasons to tune in, but I will save that for then. Another game that I didn't see it playing out this way because they tend to
Well,
play their best ball on the
hold on.
road.
Before we
Go
get
ahead.
to the next game, I thought you were going to add some more on this game, so let's not go too far just yet.
Well,
So,
for full disclosure, I had both my kids had basketball games Saturday, and so I'm watching a little bit on the phone, watching the box score, and so I was not as locked into it as you were.
did you see the final
Not that
play
I
though?
didn't. Yeah, I did see the final play, and I've heard both sides.
Listen,
What was your opinion?
I put the rule book on Twitter. Um,
Okay.
I went to the NCAA rule book because that's what we do. You know how much I love reading lengthy rule books, but I thought it was important because it is an interesting thing to think about, right? In terms of how the play plays out. And, everyone's first thought is, well, the guy's got to have position to come back down, right? And that is true. Like he has to be able to make a, what is it called? A basketball play. Um,
Right.
so like this is from the verticality section, okay, where we're really getting into the weeds here, but I think this is something that is going to it's already sparked the debate. But let me say this before I go into this. Like, there's no guarantee that Wendell Green hits all 3 free throws to tie the game and send it to overtime. Let's remember that. But you certainly can understand the frustration with getting that opportunity to put yourself in that position. And again, the teams did combine to go 5 for 48 from 3. So let's also add that to the mix. But if you want to look at it, 3 different things caught my eye here in the verticality section, which is section 39, by the way, if you didn't know that, for the trivia buffs out there. Verticality section, section 39 of the NCAA rulebook, which I can tell Chris is thrilled with this right now. But the
Well,
eye.
I'm watching the play again, and I don't
Okay.
have the angle that I want to see.
Well, as you're watching the play, listen to what I'm saying, because this may impact your opinion here. So, all right. So the defender, this is section I of section 39. The defender may not belly up or use the lower part of the body or arms to cause contact outside his vertical plane or inside the opponent's vertical plane. I think that's relevant to this discussion. J, the player with the ball should be giving no more protection or consideration than the defender in the judging of which player, if either, has violated the principle of verticality. I don't know if that means anything, but here I think is an interesting one. K, the offensive player must be allowed enough space to make a normal basketball play. The defense may not invade the vertical space of the offense and make illegal contact when the offensive player is attempting a normal basketball play. A normal basketball play in this context includes shooting, passing, dribbling, or pivoting. I think that's the big one that you probably would look at in this scenario.
Yeah.
And that's what I kind of pointed out to look, is to say, hey, if you're just going by the rule itself, I think that one, certainly has an impact on just how the play plays out. Now, there are other people, and I know we have a lot of Tennessee fans that watch this. We probably have more Tennessee fans than we do Auburn fans that watch our basketball stuff. But that is to say, and I know a lot of people are pointing out, look, it's a flop, right? Green kind of certainly maybe accentuates it a little bit, exaggerates the play. I mean, I do, like you said, you've seen a lot of arguments both ways. But I just think it's one where, I don't know. It's certainly a very controversial play. It's one that, like I said, I think just based on how that game played out, I mean, it was almost, I don't want to say it's fitting, but it was almost like of course that game's going to end on something like that. And but yeah, I mean that's kind of what all the discussion's been. And I mean, it's frustrating for Auburn, but I think is even, I don't know exactly what Bruce Pearl's comments were. I highly doubt he commented on went too far into the thing itself. Of course, we saw him chasing off the
Well, I mean,
referee.
he did comment on it. That's for sure.
I didn't see his full comment, but I saw him chasing off the
Okay.
referee. But yeah.
Well, let me ask you, because I'm trying to find the one from the backside, which I saw out of the corner of my eye once. The one from the TV view looks like he's got a beef, but I don't have the advantage of depth perception, and as it goes to, I'm not phrasing that well. What I'm trying to say is I would like to see the backside angle of that again, because I know what it looked like from the other side.
Yeah. Well, I read the rule book. I think based on the actual way the rule book states it, that I can understand why there's so many people questioning why nothing was called. But I also know that if you're a Tennessee fan, that's there's probably other plays you can point to and all this other stuff. But yeah, it's I hate well, I hate that games end on plays like that, because it is just kind of something that becomes bigger than the game itself. But in this instance, I mean, I guess the game itself was not the most noteworthy in terms of headlines. So like I said, of course it would end that way. But it's a frustrating loss for Auburn, I think, because you think about how close you are in that game, despite going 3 of 27 from 3 and shooting less than 36% from from 2. And so you combine all those together. What they shoot 23%, something like that from the field.
Yeah.
The lowest in, I don't remember, was it like since 85 or something like that. I may get my stats mixed up, but I think that's probably even more frustrating for Auburn, is knowing that you did not play your best offensively in any way, shape, or form. But yet, basically, comes down to a final play to where you have a chance perhaps to send this game to overtime. And so that, I think, makes it even more frustrating, just based on how it plays out there. So
I still cannot find the backside replay of this one. I mean, am I making that up? I feel like I saw that once.
I don't remember all the different angles
The
they
one
showed.
the camera behind the other baseline.
They may have shown that. I don't remember all the. I just remember
Here it
seeing
is. Here we go. Here we go.
the main one. So, yeah, 23.6% for Auburn from the field. Tennessee 27%. That's why I said I think that's what makes this so frustrating, is you play that bad and you have a chance to take this game to overtime.
Well, look,
And
I'm not going to bet my life on it, because I still don't. I don't have the exact angle that I want to see. I guess Vescovy could have gone. Is he faced him to the right enough to not to give him room? But in what I can see in the 2 replays I'm watching, I think they've got. I can understand why they got a beef.
well, there you go. Listen, we're not winning either way, no matter what we say.
No,
here. So
we'll get
let's
killed
just
in the
call it what
comments
it
for
is.
that.
We're not.
Yeah.
We love you all. This is what we do. We love you all. Everybody love everybody, as Jackie Moon once said. So on to the next one.
Oh, let's see. The next one was South Carolina and Arkansas.
On to the next one. No, I'm just
kidding. and South Carolina seems to play its better ball on the road, but had a real shot in this one. We have talked about this Carolina team. There are nights that it shows up and plays ball and can challenge good teams, and then most of the rest of the time it's train wreck. I did get to see the last couple minutes of this game. Gosh, 3 guys played 40 minutes again for Arkansas. Gamecocks had a good look at the last. I thought Arkansas defended it well. Josh Gray was not the guy you wanted taking a shot. Well, no. I'm sorry.
An open look, perhaps, but
well, what I'm saying, that's not the guy you wanted taking the shot, is what I'm getting at.
he had a good game. He just, I don't
He
think
did have a good game, but he's not a 3-point shooter.
Well, I was gonna say, I think that's, yeah. Hey, this
Which
was
means
way closer.
Arkansas defended it well. They did not.
All right, yeah, that's true. Let him take the shot. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, look,
that was his first 3-pointer of the year, by the way.
Well, then to that point,
3-point attempt.
He did not have anything to say that he could not make the shot. So, if you really think about it, but
well done.
No, I mean, you're right. Like, and again, they would probably tell you that, and it's probably not exactly what they were drawing up, especially since you knew Arkansas was going to defend Michi Johnson because he had already hit 5, something like that. So, yeah, I mean, look, this game way closer than we would have expected. South Carolina takes the lead with 2 minutes to go. Would have never thought that. And as I keep saying, give Lamont Paris credit. Like, this team doesn't just quit. They keep playing. They don't have, as we said, what they need to keep up in this league, but they're still right there in some of these games. And, so yeah, I mean, that we talked about it. I put this stat out on Twitter. Like, South Carolina, I look this up again, but it's like heading into that game, when you looked at it from just their home losses, like the average of their home losses, just an absurd number. Let me pull this up here real quick. Yeah, they lost 5 straight home games heading into that one, and the average loss was by 25.2 points per game, all by more than 12 points. So, yeah, I mean, they have a shot to win the game at the end, and that's just, would have never thought it. But for Arkansas, guess what? Doesn't matter how you win them; it's that you win them. And they got to the magic number that we kept pushing for 3 weeks. They were going to get to 5-5. They got to 5-5. Now your season begins, essentially, because their final 8 games here, you've only got one bad loss opportunity. That's against Georgia at home. Every other game is going to be challenging, but that's good for Arkansas because they need some more good wins. And so I think they, are set up in a nice spot. Now everyone can say, well, if they play like they did South Carolina, they're not going to beat anybody, and that's true. But again, it's a 1-game deal, and so they go to Kentucky on Tuesday. Huge opportunity. Mississippi State at home, even a bigger opportunity. Now as we start to see State make their turn, at A&M's a big opportunity. Florida's getting better. At Bama, at Tennessee, home against Kentucky. Like, I don't know that anybody has a tougher final 8 games on the schedule. And of course, I need to look at everybody else's, but I can't imagine, there's a tougher one or more than maybe one or two that are tougher than this because it's a brutal stretch for Arkansas the rest of the way. And so I still think, the magic number for them is to get to 9-9 in conference play. They're 5-5 now. So, because at that point their strength of schedule is good enough, and it's only going to get better from here, I think. So, yeah, I think the Hogs did what they had to do. They won the 4 games in a row they needed to win in SEC play. Reset some things. Know that you're going to be having a different rotation every night just based on the need of what that game requires, and yet you still know kind of your guys that are going to play, like, Black, Davis, Council, they're all going to play close to 40 minutes every night. And it's just what happens with the rotation everywhere else is going to be the question. And, you get a Jalen Graham that pops up and gets 16 points. So that's just going to be necessary for Arkansas to win some of these games. And so I think that's it. We know this rotation has gotten shortened considerably. And I know there's a lot of talk about, maybe Nick Smith's coming back. I haven't heard anything on that, but
That's been rumored for a while. I don't know if that's fact or urban legend at this point.
well, I'm just saying, obviously if he comes back, that's huge. But if he doesn't, you're kind of in this situation where, like I said, they've proven they can win games. Now they're playing a bit better, even though you can look at a 2-point win in South Carolina and say, well, that's not good. And it wasn't great. What a great performance. But to win 4 in a row in league play, like you're doing something right to be able to find a way to win these games. And so now it just gets a lot tougher. So, yeah, that's it for Arkansas.
Yeah, okay. We usually do these generally in order of the way they were played, and so we actually started with the wrong one in that case.
Yeah, I don't know where we're going here.
Well, I was going to go to Vandy Ole Miss, and just for
Okay.
disclosure, okay. Usually on Saturday afternoons and Wednesdays, and Blake and I are glued to the TV watching just about every minute of every game where life doesn't get in the way. Saturday, I had basketball games right in the middle of the day for my son and my daughter. And so my ability to watch 4 games was more limited than it usually does. Now there were moments in timeouts of those games where I was watching on my phone in my kid's gym, but I was just a little more limited in terms of what I can tell you from watching live this weekend. But one I did catch just about from start to finish, was Vandy Ole Miss and the 2 nightcaps. And let's go Vandy Ole Miss here. Liam Robbins was great for Vandy. Tyron Lawrence got out of the doghouse, played pretty well. 2 teams that aren't that good for the most part. It was a close game. It was the computers nailed it. I think they had Vandy's a 4-point favorite. That's what it was. Matt Morrell came back for Ole Miss. Played okay. It is what it is. This game doesn't affect much other than the bottom half of the SEC tournament bracket, which that's almost certainly where Ole Miss is headed, or not the bottom half. The Wednesday night portion is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I don't have a lot on this game. I mean, I don't know that we learned a whole lot. I mean, I think it played out exactly as you would have expected with these 2 teams. Morrell coming back was going to give them a little bit of a scoring boost. He didn't make a lot of shots. He didn't shoot well from the field, but first game back, not shocked by that against I think not a bad defensive team, even though they're not great all the time, as we know. We saw a recent result of that in Tuscaloosa. But, yeah, I mean, Liam Robbins is still the best player on Vanderbilt's team, and playing without Jordan Wright, I thought that was significant to, win a game like that that's close without Jordan Wright, I think is important. But otherwise, I don't have a lot because I just
There's
don't
not a
know.
lot to get excited about with either team here. I mean,
No.
Robbins goes 19-12 with 7 blocks. When we did our podcast on midseason awards, I'd put him up for most underrated player in the league. I probably wouldn't make him my pick because he just hasn't played enough. Some of that's been injury, some of that's been his coach. But and it's against Ole Miss, to take it for what it's worth. But he was great, and he shows you what he can be when it's all going well.
Yep. So for Vanderbilt, I think at this point it's just trying to stay out of the Wednesday night action, which right now they would. Yeah, there's not a lot of upside everywhere else. I mean, it's just kind of, these are two teams that you just feel like are, obviously in different places from a record standpoint. But I mean, look, Vanderbilt's got 2 big opportunities this week, Tennessee and Florida. Maybe they find something there to win one of those games perhaps and get some momentum back. But right now, there's just not a lot of it. So
Alabama LSU closer than we thought. Alabama put 5 guys in double figures, got a pretty good output from its bench. Brandon Miller wasn't normal Brandon Miller. Hey, LSU got scoring from somewhere other than KJ Williams. Derek Fountain had maybe a career game, and LSU kept it closer than I thought it would. I guess maybe one takeaway from this is maybe LSU's got some respectable basketball left in it, despite, was that 10 losses in a row now? And then on the other side, Alabama just keeps rolling and is the only unbeaten team in the league.
yeah, I mean, it's closer than you think, and yet it's still the 9th double-digit win for Alabama out of 10 SEC games.
Goodness.
So I mean,
When's the last time a team was that dominant in terms of double-digit wins? I mean, it's got to be one of.
I mean, it's probably a Kentucky team.
Kentucky teams.
Yeah, I would think that's probably it, and I don't know if those Florida teams, but yeah, and that's what I mean. Like, that's kind of my point here is Alabama did not play their best game. They still win by 10. It's just kind of that's what you expect from Alabama at this point, and that's kind of the standard that's been set. Is we didn't play great. That's not good enough. To only win by 10 at LSU. So that's just, yeah. I mean, they hit 13 threes again though. As we said, we hit 20 the last time these two teams played. Again, we talked about, it was never going to be another 40-point game, but you've talked about just the mismatches. Like, this felt like one of the more significant mismatches in the SEC because of LSU's scoring struggles and Alabama's just ability to go off at any time. But Brandon Miller didn't have a great game, but guess what? Brandon Miller still had a double-double. See that once again, like we're pointing out, these guys are, Alabama didn't play to their level. Brandon Miller didn't have a great game yet. They still win by 10. He still has a double-double. Like, that's where Alabama is right now. And so, yeah, I mean, winning on the road, as we say all the time, like, it's not always going to be pretty. Like, more often than not, it's not going to be pretty. But for a team like Alabama, it's just, they just keep doing what they're doing here and moving right along. And, we're a little bit, a week more removed now, I guess, from the Oklahoma game. And it's just like, I still am not, I'm looking at as the outlier, versus the norm here. I just think it's one of those games that happened, but we said this was a week of response for Alabama. Responded by just demolishing Vanderbilt, and then they go on the road and didn't play their best and still win by 10 at LSU. So, yeah, that's why they're still a number 1 seed, and a very interesting stretch coming up here for Alabama. Home against Florida, the Iron Bowl of basketball on Saturday at Auburn, and then they go to Tennessee next Wednesday. So 3 huge games in a row here for the Tide, and I think winning all 3 of those is going to be a challenge. As of right now, Ken Palm's got a 6.1% chance of Alabama going unbeaten in SEC play. If they can win both of those road games against Auburn and Tennessee, that percentage is going to go way up. So I think it's going to be hard to do, but at the same time, there's not a lot I put past this team just based on their ability. They're still one of the favorites to win the national championship. And yes, for LSU, the upside is you get a little more scoring out of somebody else, and maybe, just maybe, after this schedule loosens up a bit after this week, Georgia, South Carolina, Vanderbilt, Ole Miss, 4 games in a row right there for the taking, perhaps, for LSU. We'll see what they can do.
Mississippi State has had trouble shooting the ball, but one way to make a high percentage of your shots is to get a lot of dunks, which it felt like State was dunking at every turn in the second half. There were some real highlight reel ones in that one. I don't know if it's fair to call Missouri's three-point shooting erratic, but it's felt like it the last month that they've either been red hot where they're going 15 to 30, or you get what they threw out there in Starkville, which was 6 of 23. You had some guys playing minutes for them and numbers, that them being Missouri, that you don't normally see. Toulouse Smith was tremendous, 25 and 12. And this was a game that State really needed to win. State is not really in the NCAA tournament discussion yet, but it's got that path to get there. And this is one that I thought the Bulldogs had to get to do that, and they did it on Saturday.
Yeah, we overthought this one. That's what I hinted at earlier.
Yeah, we did.
There's no reason not to pick Mississippi State here. Because the problem is, you just said Missouri's erratic three-point shooting. I think it's very clear what Missouri is. They're not a good road team. Their road splits are bad. They're bad. And, like, take the Ole Miss game out of the equation, okay? Because that was one where you just kind of have a career night, basically, in one night for a team. They hit 16 of 30 from 3. That was the outlier when we talk about those kind of things. That's not the norm for this team. The norm for this team is not being able to make shots on the road. And that's, again, we overthought it. We should have just said, you know what? They're on the road. Mississippi State's at home. Mississippi State's in a must-win situation pretty much every game they play in right now. We should have picked Mississippi State. Like, that's on us, because I don't know why I think, again, we went the offense versus defense equation. But when you really looked at it, I think we should have known that this was going to be a game that Missouri was not going to keep up their 43 of 87 from three-point range in 3 straight games. That was not going to continue here. And they go 6 of 23. They struggle to make shots all over the place. And I know you're not going to believe this, Chris, but I'm about to say something I don't think I've said this year. I thought the rotations a little bit were not the best either for Missouri. So, sorry, Dennis.
Had a friend that sent me that in text too, and his
Please
name
don't fire
was not
me.
Blake.
I'm still.
Well, I mean, here's the one that stands out is Majok played 5 minutes. He barely played 5 minutes all year. DR played 24. That might have been a season high for him.
Yeah, I just thought that I don't know. I thought it was a little more reactionary to what Mississippi State was going to do versus, I think, what Missouri could have done themselves to kind of make Mississippi State play their game. And so that was, and again, there's valid criticism there. But at the end of the day, too, you just got to make some shots, and Missouri just does not do that well enough on the road right now. And so that was, like I said, we should have known 52 points should not have been that shocking when you really looked at it for a team that had, struggled at Arkansas to score consistently, struggled at A&M to score consistently. We kind of did say this could be similar to the A&M Florida games in that Missouri could struggle to make shots, 7 of 31 from 3 in that game against A&M that they lost by 18. The Florida game, they go 3 of 18 from 3. And that's basically how this played out, was you just kind of had one of those where the elite defensive team just, force it. You can't make shots against this kind of team. And again, some of those are open looks. Some of those are a bit tougher based on how Mississippi State defends. And so, yeah, I say all that to point out, like, this is a great win for Mississippi State because, as we said, at this point, they're all huge because they have to get – they have still a lot of ground to make up to get where they need to go from a record standpoint in the SEC play. They're still just 3-7. And they've got some tough games left still. They got to go to Arkansas, got to go to Missouri. They've still got A&M and Kentucky. So yeah, like every game is huge now for Mississippi State, and so they found a way to win. Toulouse Smith going 9 of 12 from the free throw line. I think that's significant too because we've seen some of those games where that free throw shooting has not been pretty. And 72% for Mississippi State from the line is significant for a team that shoots 63% on the year. So nice win for Mississippi State. Missouri's got to figure out their play on the road. And yeah, I thought those were the biggest things from that one.
Yeah, okay. Kentucky, Florida ended last. And again, we usually go in order of tip, but I want to flip this one a little bit because I think there's a lot more to talk about here than there's A&M Georgia. I know the first half, that was sort of a, hey, Auburn, Tennessee, hold my beer game for a while in terms of scoring and all those things. That was ugly. I thought if you just turned in from the second half on and you watch both teams, I thought both teams should have felt pretty good about how they came out of this one. If you're Kentucky, you won with one of the worst games you'll get from Oscar Tshiebwe ever. Colin Castleton was phenomenal, Blake. Just unbelievable. Just taking it to Tshiebwe, scoring off the dribble, just showing some versatility. Florida hung there till the end. It was a game that was in doubt until the final seconds, and I really the first half was not a lot of fun, but I really thought the second half was an enjoyable game.
Yeah, I mean, I think we kind of expected that from Castleton because I mean he played well last year against Tshiebwe in the two meetings, I guess. Because he does have a little bit of a size. It's what 2 inches, but I still think he does some things that can exploit some of Tshiebwe's weaknesses, and I think one of those is consistent defending. Um, and so I think, like we said, this was going to be a Castleton game where he's got to have a big game if Florida wants to have a chance. And give Florida credit, they're down 14 with 8 minutes to go, somewhere in there, and they find a way to battle back to make this a game, towards the end. And but on the same point there, I don't know why we need to keep repeating it, but like the Case and Wallace thing is real. Like it is a real thing. And when he has the ball in his hands the most, Kentucky is better. Like they're just a better team. And 20 points here, 27 minutes. I said going into the game, I put on Twitter my thread, kind of looking at the storylines for all these games. His status was crucial here because if he doesn't play in this game, it's completely different. And I just think that's because of what he can do with this offense and his scoring ability, his ability to make things easier on other guys to score, so many different things. But I think once again that was evident here. But the bigger story is what you said to me. Kentucky can win a game like this with Oscar Tshiebwe scoring 4 points, and that's a dangerous thing because that's just something that I think that is significant for a team like this. And that shows, I think, some of the improvement Kentucky's made is that they can find a way to win one of these games because you played this game 2 months ago and there's no chance probably that's going to happen. So, a nice win for Kentucky. I think Florida, it's, maybe a little frustrated just that you cannot get a little more going consistently. But overall, I still think defensively is what we said. Florida's kind of hanged its hat on its defense. I didn't think they were bad here at all. They just, Kentucky hit shots, and it was always going to be a tough game to win. We talked about this 4-game stretch: Kansas State, Tennessee, Kentucky, and now they got to go to Alabama on Wednesday. But yeah, I mean, I think the Gators are still, they're in position to be in position, right? They're 6-4 in the league.
Yeah.
They're projected to go 11-7 because after this Alabama game, their schedule gets really nice after this Alabama game. Let's just call it what it is. Florida's got one of the easiest schedules left of anybody in the league, which they've been waiting for, right? Just given kind of this recent stretch. So, yeah, I think look at it from that standpoint. I think the Gators are going to be okay. So,
2 takeaways on the Kentucky end. Was glad to see CJ Frederick didn't get hurt. He had a spill where it looked like he might have hurt his ribs running into a photographer chasing a ball out of bounds. Was down for a couple minutes, came back, was kind of touching his ribs at times. So I'm assuming he was feeling it. He was kind of the guy they needed. He gave him 12 points, was 3 of 6 from distance. Played 35 minutes. I'll double check that. Yeah. And I thought Xavier Wheeler has been the target of a lot of criticism. And yeah, I think they are better with Case and Wallace running the point. But I feel like since they made that move, and correct me if I feel like Wheeler's had an injury or two in there too. I could be misremembering that, but I feel like he's been much better lately and was pretty good on Saturday too.
Yeah. I mean, I that's why I think when you look at Kentucky, they're starting to figure it out because we've seen, usually the conversation is just around like, all right, it's just one guy, right? But like you're seeing more guys. I think again, they're just starting to figure it out. And that's why I think like the Kansas loss was disappointing, but I think it was a little deceiving for some people because it's sort of like, well, if they've really turned the corner, that's the game they have to win. Well, yes and no, because in SEC play now, what? I mean, they've won 6 in a row. Like they've won 6 straight games, and I think we have to keep that in mind here. Like they've beaten Tennessee, Georgia, A&M, Vanderbilt, Ole Miss, Florida now. Like they've won 6 straight in SEC play. They were 1-3. Let's remember that after the South Carolina loss. So they and the adjustments have been made. I said before I didn't know if they would ever make them offensively, but they've made some of those adjustments now, and they're being rewarded for that. And so, yeah, I mean, are they in a tournament right now? Barely, perhaps. They're far from out of the woods here of being a lock for the tournament. And we can say that, by the way, about everybody but 2 teams in the SEC. But I think the way they're playing now is going to lend itself for them to make that run to get in because they are doing things much better and they are seemingly much more flexible in how they approach some of these games. And I think that's made a big difference.
Speaking of in the tournament or not the tournament, Bracket Matrix has not updated. It says it updated February the 4th. I'm going to presume that's before the games. Texas A&M is not in Bracket Matrix's
Yeah, that's outdated.
amalgamation to bracket. Okay, so I mean they might have played there. I don't know what beating Georgia at home does for you other than
nothing,
loss avoidance. Although the way they did it is going to move them up in the predictive computers when you win by 25. Yeah, I think A&M continues to play really well. It's just a tough offensive team or a tough team to guard. Georgia really the last 3 weeks has taken huge steps backwards. I don't know what's going on with Cario Aquindo, who's not playing nearly as much, got 2 points in 12 minutes. And they got Terry Roberts got hurt in that game too, I believe, or before the game. Yeah, who's been their leading scorer. I think he takes too many shots at times. But
I don't. We've always disagreed on that.
Because okay, well, I mean,
who else is going to take the shots, Chris? That's my question to you. Who else? Who else should be shooting?
You've got a guy who scored.
I don't. Okay. I think they have to have those 2 guys taking the bulk of shots because I just don't. I mean, look, they've got some other good players.
Enough, I don't think.
Well, you may be right about that, but I don't. I think the Roberts thing is a little overblown. I think it's like Severe Wheeler 2.0. Like at Georgia. I mean, I think you've got a team that is lacking offensively, and so I'm always going to be okay with one of your better offensive players taking more shots, like than trying to be equally, distributing it elsewhere. I just think that's because really, I think that's the thing with Georgia right now is, well, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of reasons why they're struggling. One reason they can't stop anybody, but I just think when you look at how they play, I mean, look, if you're going into these kind of games, right, against the top tier teams, which they've played a lot of those recently, think about this road stretch. Their last 4 SEC road games at Kentucky, at Tennessee, at Auburn, at Texas A&M. Brutal.
Why? It seems like you've got a lot of teams that have got games clustered like that this year. I'm not blaming the league. Sometimes you don't know.
Yeah, I think that's
how things are going to fall, but it seems like it disproportionately hit a lot of teams this year.
I think it's just like that's hard to know before the season, but I mean, you got to put those games somewhere, and I guess that's just how it works out. There's
Right.
another thing, like I'd hate to be the person that makes schedules because you want to talk about complaining and oh goodness.
Yeah.
But anyways, back to the original point of I mean Georgia. This is a team, as we said, that's kind of coming back down to earth, and we thought they would just based on the schedule and the fact that they were having to win some sort of grinded out type games, and I didn't think their offense was going to stay to the level it needed to. And then it's like, well, if their defense dips a little bit, oh, not good. And they're having both of those right now. But I think still, when you're looking at overall, this is not to say that Abdur Rahim and I mean, what Hill went for, what did he go for 20 in this game? That was a season high for him. So, like, it's not to
Yeah.
say guys can't score, but in the same sense, like, if you're asking me, would I rather, Roberts and Aquendo combine for 60 of Georgia's 80 shots, I'd be perfectly fine with that because I just think those are still the guys that have to take all the shots for them to
Yeah.
be in that position. But I also understand what you're saying about, you could look at some of them and say, well, maybe if you take some of those away, some better shots here or there, it's a little bit different. But I still think if you're leaning on your top guys, those are clearly the top two guys. And the Aquendo thing I think is understandable from that standpoint. But yeah, this was always going to be a challenge. I think without Roberts to win, it was going to be a challenge no matter what. But A&M just playing that well, and again, I mean, A&M doing what they have to do right now. They're avoiding bad losses. They're picking up some good wins along the way, and I think they are setting themselves up very nicely now at 8-2 in the league. So
Yeah. That was another dunk show game.
yeah, just take your dunks where you can get them, right? So. By the way, I know we're about to wrap up. But I'm going to quickly go back to the Bruce Pearl comment, okay? Because this is probably going to be the most talked about thing in our video, I'm sure. But here's what Bruce said after the game, all right? Most disappointing loss of the year. This is from the Montgomery Advertiser here. Very disappointed at the end of the game. Very disappointed. But I've got to do a better job of getting our guys in practice. I've just got to work on it more. We're working on a lot of things, but I've just got to work on some in-game offense so I can get my team better shots. That's what I'm responsible for. So Bruce takes the hit here, but disappointed, I think, in the call as it stands there at the end. Very controversial finish. So, by the way, Chris, just quickly on that foul call, I put out a poll on Twitter. Foul or no foul? Because we know where Twitter is, where you can find all your unbiased information and opinions.
Right.
Always going to get unbiased.
Which is why I love to hang out on Twitter.
Yeah, always going to get unbiased opinions on there. But out of 303 votes, did a little quick poll here. 84.5%. Yes, it was a foul. 15.5% no foul. So I'm going to guess that 15.5% came from one fan base. I'm going to guess the 84.5% came from another and some other fan bases perhaps. But yeah, so there you go. I know that's going to still be talked about, but I'm fine with moving on. And
yeah, I would still like to see a little better angle than what I've seen, but I think if you had to put a gun to my head and make me make a choice, I'm on the side of the 84% in this one.
All right. Well, I'll put you down for that on that side. It's going to bring it
that
up.
May get a gun to my head. I don't know.
I'm going to put up 85.7% now for the foul call. So there you go.
I get the vote of 3 people.
Yeah, you get the vote of 3. It's like the
all right. We'll take it.
It's the Terry Roberts shot distribution effect. So
yeah, I like it. All right, we've got a lot of stuff coming up. We're going to be interviewing some SEC baseball head coaches this week. As we get ready for that, we're going to be doing some football stuff. We still got some football previews to wrap up. We haven't forgotten those. We just we're 2 guys with limited time some days. We're getting there. Anyway, if you like it, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. Both those things help us out. Thanks for watching us here at Southeastern 14. He's Blake Lovell. I'm Chris Lee. God bless everybody. Have a great day.